Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Practical Cannabis Podcast. My name is Athena Lumsden, and today's topic is the differences between using cannabis to treat a short-term condition versus a dysfunctional endocannabinoid system. If you're following along in the Practical Cannabis Guidebook, you're going to want to be checking out pages 6 and 7. But don't worry, if you don't have the guidebook, you don't need it to enjoy the podcast and get good value out of it. Also, for the record, I am a high-dose medical cannabis patient, which means you will be seeing or hearing me using my prescription during the recording of this podcast. I'm using my CBN infused tea, my Godzilla glue from a friend's garden, which I'm just in love with, my lotion, my lip balm, and my patches. I'm wearing 3 today, and the patches are my favorite. And if you want to use any of the infusions that I'm using, check out the guidebook. It's got the recipes. Okay, so like I said, today I'm going to be talking about the differences between using a cannabis to treat an injury or an illness versus an underproductive endocannabinoid system, how we perceive the difference, how this affects our treatment plans, and tips on how to infuse your life for either set of needs. And just a really quick reminder, while I am a great researcher and problem solver, I am not a doctor, and this is not medical advice. It is simply information that I believe we all have a right to know. And if you feel that it resonates with your personal health concerns, I strongly recommend speaking with your primary care practitioner about whether or not medical cannabis is right for you. Okay, so the biggest differences between using cannabis to treat an injury or an illness versus an underproductive endocannabinoid system is it's not about, edible versus topical versus inhaled version, or whether or not it's scheduling and whatnot. It's really about, are you supplementing a healthy endocannabinoid system that's caring for a damaged body? Or are you caring for a body that has a dysfunctional endocannabinoid system? Because one of them is like a Band-Aid and a pat on the back, while the other one is a straight up wheelchair and life support. Because without cannabinoids, nothing works. To help point out how we perceive the difference in our bodies, I like to remind people that we are an ecosystem. And I like comparing it to a lake because I live right near the Great Lakes. They're just here, they're beautiful. It's a wonderful source of inspiration. But if you have a healthy body, it's like having a healthy lake. You've got the plants, you've got the animals. There's so much life here. It's vibrant and wonderful, and it has its own steady supply of water. So the rain, it may come, it may not, and it doesn't matter because there's always its own supply. So if it becomes damaged, if there's an oil spill or somebody comes in with a backhoe and rips a chunk of it out, the water and the life that is already there and inherently involved will come in and repair that over time. And it might take time, and it might do a lot of damage in the meantime, and it might not be nearly so pretty when it's done. But it has the capacity to repair and clean itself up and move forward because it has its water, because it has its supply. Whereas if you have a defective or deficient endocannabinoid system, there is no water. You have a lake bed, but that's it. All the animals are dead or gone. The plants are dead, scraggly, barren things, sad. And the aquifer underneath, the reservoir that's supposed to feed the lake to keep its supplies, it's empty too. So when this particular environment gets hit with an oil spill or with a backhoe ripping a chunk of it out, the oil spill just sits there and stays and does the damage. It doesn't get diluted, it doesn't get filtered, it doesn't get cleaned up or moved at all. And the backhoe damage does not, it doesn't encourage new plants to come in, it doesn't become a home for a new animal, it doesn't become an extension of the lake itself. It's just a big, raw, awful hole. And then the wind comes through and scours it to remind you regularly about how bad it is and makes it worse. Because as time goes on, it continues to get worse. And you will feel that through every fiber of your being. It's highly unpleasant. It's part of why I love cannabis so much, because it really helps with this particular set of sensations. So, how does this affect our treatment plan? Well, if you have a healthy lake and it gets hit with that oil spill, or the backhoe comes along and you want to help that lake, we send in an environmental cleanup crew. We help have the tools and the supplies. We start planting trees. We encourage habitats to happen. And in doing so, all we're doing is making it so that the lake bed the lake has the capacity to be a lake. And that's all we're doing when we add phytocannabinoids to our bodies, because phytocannabinoids are supporting the endocannabinoids. The endocannabinoids are already there. The systems are in place. Everything knows how to do its job already. We're just giving it a boost, a helping hand, a greater reserve to get the job done. So when the job is done, we stop. We don't need to spend the rest of time in that lake cleaning up that oil spill or maintaining that backhoe hole. It's cleaned up, it's nice, it's better, it moves on. So if you care for your environment with the added support, it heals itself in a cleaner, prettier, faster, more enduring fashion. Now, if you're using cannabis to support that dry lake bed, you have to start with not even thinking about that oil spill or that hole made by the backhoe. You have to start thinking about that dead, dry aquifer. Okay, you have to refill to get water to the lake in the first place before you can even think about how you're going to clean up any of the messes that have been made in the meantime. And so when we think about this bare, dry lake bed, we think, oh my God, we need to fill it up as fast as we can. So we need to hit it with the highest dose of edibles. We need to have we need to bathe in it. We need to make sure that, ripping the fat dabs and having the, 1,000 milligram edibles to boost up to a certain level. And sometimes that might be helpful depending on what you're dealing with. But typically speaking, if you found a dry lake bed and you showed up with a fireman's hose, and you started just blasting through as much water as fast and high pressure as you could, you wouldn't really be doing that lake bed any good, because you'd be blasting the soil all over the place and doing damage to the lake itself. You'd be spraying the cannabinoids spraying the water all over the place and making a mess of the environment around it, and possibly even on the people around you. Doing massive amounts of cannabis all at once can actually be detrimental. It can get in the way of proper absorption and processing, because a lot of that water isn't staying in that lake bed, and then the lake bed's damaged even more so. But it kind of sort of feels better because it's definitely gotten wet, right? A little bit has happened, but it's not really efficient. In my personal belief, I feel that many sources of moderate application, especially non-psychoactive versions, let us use as much as we need to never be overwhelmed, but also never be dropped, and it refills the reservoir in a kind way while also making it so that the symptoms of the moment are also getting attention that they need. And it should also be noted that it can be tempting to believe that once you've refilled that aquifer and some life has come into your lake, that it's fixed. That somehow, some way, your base endocannabinoid system will just see how wonderful it is to be in a functioning environment with all the life growing around you. Because that's what happens when you eventually refill a lake bed, is the plants will regrow and the animals will come in and the environment gets a lot nicer. But if you stop the source of the water from coming in, you cannot expect that your endocannabinoid system is going to magically want to provide its own. Maybe if you're lucky, it gets a jump start and life moves forward, but that's not typically the way that it works. If it was broken before and not providing the cannabinoids, it's not just going to start now because it learned how nice it was to have them. You need to make sure that you are taking them consistently and regularly to provide that base level of support, or else it does go right back to being used up. These are temporary. This is not a permanent fix. This is a supplement. Just like when you eat breakfast in the morning, it doesn't mean that you never have to eat again. You've got to eat tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the day after. You use up the resources. You need to make sure you keep putting the resources in a way that fits for your life. So let's talk about some tips on how to infuse your life for either set of needs. So if you have that healthy endocannabinoid system, you only really need to use what you need to get by. So you're using symptom-specific cultivars and application methods. You're using it as needed to take the edge off, but you're allowing your body to do the heavy lifting when it comes to healing, and you don't need to worry about going for extended periods in between treatments because your body will tell you when it needs backup, and you provide it, you move forward. Whereas if you have that broken or deficient endocannabinoid system and you need it to provide what you don't have, we talk about all those many sources of kind input. That's why I talk about when we were talking about my care kit, I had one edible, I have one inhalable, but I listed off 3 topicals, and I typically have at least 7 at my disposal because it's a kind way that is not psychoactive to put in more cannabinoids on site. So if I'm having a pain or a mobility issue, I can use it on that site and get the mobility back without having to smoke or some such. And this really helps because I know my canna codes, and I highly recommend that you find out what your personal canna codes are as well, because that knowledge is going to save you a lot of hassle knowing which cannabinoids, which terpenes, which application methods, what fits your life, your way. And I think that's it for today. So thank you for joining me today, and I can't wait until next time where we go over how to tell if cannabis is helping, even if it doesn't feel weird. If you want to learn more, you can check out my website at athenalumsden.com, and if you like what you heard today, I invite you to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. I'll be back with a new installment soon, and until next time, I hope you get to experience the freedoms that come with a fully supported endocannabinoid system.